about transformation, as I promised, our next stop is the Metaverse, and we've some great guests to help us think about how we leapfrog learning into this new digital space and how we can use it to create elevated learning experiences. I have with me now, joining us now, we have three great guests who are spending more and more of their times and more of their lives in the Metaverse, and have kindly accepted to come now and share with us their expertise and their experiences here on LPTV. Joining us from New York, we have Domhnaill Hernon, who's the global lead at EY Metaverse Labs. From the Netherlands, Esther O'Callaghan, OBE, and the founder of hundo.xyz. And from Lithuania, Danielius Stasiulis, co-founder, CEO of Learnoverse, and co-founder of the Metaverse Education Alliance. Welcome to LPTV, all of you. Now, the metaverse has many definitions, but globally, it's an emerging 3D-enabled digital space that uses virtual reality, augmented reality, and other advanced technology to allow people to have lifelike personal and business experiences online. Now, you three, I'd love to ask the first question to all three of you, which is, why should we care about learning in the metaverse? What are the projections for business, for employment looking forward? Danielius, I know that you've got some numbers on this. Do you want to share with us why you think we should care about learning in the metaverse?
Yeah, definitely. So I did some analysis myself. I'm ex-consultant and very happy now that McKinsey report has confirmed my numbers. And that basically by 2030, we'll have the metaverse education market will be around $200 billion. Right now, it's probably at a couple of billions, but we will see tremendous rise. Because in general, if the predictions are true that metaverse itself will be $5 to $13 trillion market, education will definitely be a part of that. And if metaverse education will be at around $200 billion, it means that around 7 million educators will be working in the metaverse. It's just simple numbers, doing proportions. But if you look at where we are now, we are nowhere near. So we'll see tremendous rise in supply, demand, and also profession specific to that.
Danielius, you say they're simple numbers, but they're important numbers because they help us project forwards. Domhnaill, from EY, do you have some numbers and projections that might help us imagine how business, and we're going to be working in the metaverse looking forwards, and therefore why it's so important that we think about learning in the metaverse?
Yeah, great to be with you all. I mean, Danielius shared some pretty big, spectacular numbers there, right? And it's a general consensus that the metaverse and Web3 combined is going to be at least as big as the internet today, if not even bigger. So I'm not going to counter those numbers. I think they're good numbers. Everyone kind of agrees on them. But what we're starting to see is we think a lot about the opportunity and around a generational divide that is existing between how younger generations expect to engage with the world and with products and with brands and with universities more in a 3D gamified way. And no matter what the market projections are, which are very strong, the younger generations are the actual ones that are going to drive this adoption. So we think about it very deeply from a human point of view. What is the problem that this technology is trying to solve? How will this solve these problems in a better and different way? Why do younger generations in particular need this? And then how do we craft business solutions around that to solve that human need?
Thank you, Domhnaill. Esther, your thoughts. Why should we care about learning in the metaverse? What's your perspective on why it's important that we think and focus on this?
Yes, I think the numbers that I looked at today, actually, as part of International Day of Education, 831 million young people and adults will have been isolated from education for some of the reasons that you talked about before this panel started. And I think for me, it's always about the metaverse can't be built and it can't exist if there isn't a future skilled workforce that knows how to operate it and use it. And I think that's where Hundo has kind of come into being. We focus exclusively at the moment on Gen Z, which is 16 to 24-year-olds, because they're still in mandatory education globally that simply can't keep pace with the rate of change. You would have to reskill 2-3 generations of teachers. And things like Chat GPT are an absolute example of how rapidly everything can be disrupted and turn everything on its head. And so for us, it's going, how do we, obviously the panel is about leapfrogging into the metaverse. It's about how do we provide a Web 2 easily accessible bridge of learning, not just for young people, but for educators, employers, parents, actually, to be able to start to understand what this is, how they have a part to play in it, and how their children and grandchildren, so Gen Z today, Gen A coming up behind, how they're actually already using this technology for fun, to communicate, to interact. They are ahead of the curve in many ways. They don't necessarily call it the metaverse. They call it Fortnite or Clash of Clans or Valorant. And I think it's bridging, I think a lot of it is about terminology. How do we start to bridge the divide so that grandparents can confidently start to empower their families to make better decisions about the type of learning and the way of learning that their families are going to need for the future.
Certainly, and some of the examples that you just gave us there, Esther, were based around gaming. One sector that's embraced the metaverse quite fully at the moment is retail. That's already a big player in there. And we see the fitness and experience industries also being well advanced. A recent survey showed that 95% of global business leaders believe that it's going to be positively impacting their business in the years ahead and are therefore already seeking to create future business models and values in the metaverse, and hence need staff and employees to start training and recruiting the workforce for the future. So this is very much about how do we transform the education to employment journey, I think also. Let's look at some examples of the businesses, entrepreneurship and commerce and entertainment that are already using this space and demonstrate how the metaverse can be used in ways that beyond just simply replicating the life that we have at the moment, say a retail experience life or a concert life or a classroom. Do any of you have any examples of what people are out there doing in the metaverse that we can share with the audience here to help them imagine? Danielius, you spent a lot of time, you're joining us, it looks promising. Do you have any examples to share with us to help people understand how this can transform?
I would say that we need to turn on the imagination of how we can recreate educational experiences in the metaverse, in metaverse's native environment. And today, as Esther said, it's gaming, and we should borrow the gaming, infrastructure, methods, etc., of creating those exciting experience in order to cater to the needs of, education. So I saw quite a few exciting gaming events in the metaverse. And I saw quite a few boring education events in the metaverse, where the same classroom was recreated. There was still the teacher was in front of the audience, and their avatars had to sit. I'm not sure if avatars get tired, but like the chair, so they sat. And at the same time, there was this other side metaverse launch event. The thousands of players in Unreal 5 were following a story, like a journey together with the founders of that metaverse, unlocking some new worlds, collectively doing some tasks. And I think that this unity that we created among the players is the unique characteristic of the metaverse. Metaverse is fundamentally social, so we should embrace it and create social learning experiences in the metaverse. Unlike it was with traditional edtech, where you had to face your laptop and nobody else most of the time.
Thank you, Danielius. Domhnaill, now that I know that with EY you're working with very many businesses, but I know that you're also passionate about the arts and the culture. I see your background there behind you, very artistic. Do you have any examples that you can share with us of things that are being done in the metaverse differently from real life to help us become inspired and understand what the full capability and potential of this new space is?
Sure, yeah, we have an artist in residence program that I established at EY. So we've like 16 artists that we work very closely with today, and they will largely work on XR, extended reality type technologies that are of benefit to the metaverse. So I can give you a couple of examples. We're very focused on accessibility and inclusivity. And like I mentioned earlier, with the younger generation, identity is extremely important, and how people want to be able to show up in whatever way they want for their personal needs in any moment in time. So some of the artists we work with come from very diverse backgrounds. They have very interesting lived experiences. And I'll give you just one quick example of one of the artists. Kate Mocktiger is her name. She's a designer artist, and she is neurodivergent. She has autism, and she has a particular sensitivity to certain colors and textures in the physical world. And she has kind of turned that hypersensitivity into her creativity, where she creates these gigantic, fantastical creations for brands. Like you walk into a retail store and you're brought into an entirely different world. And what that does is, in the physical world, it triggers people to start thinking about their place in the world in a different place. And they exit these magical environments and they come back into the quote unquote physical normal world. And all of a sudden they have a heightened alertness about colors and textures around them. And what we're doing is working with Kate on how we take her lived experience, her creativity, her neurodivergence, and how do we bring that into the metaverse? So how can we create these virtual environments that are visually dominated? And how do we connect into people's memory of the physical space and cause them to have reactions that are way beyond just the visual by tying into their lived experience, their connection to the physical world, and have them come out of these metaverse environments and think differently about the physical world around them? So this is the work that super excites me. I could talk to you about all the use cases we do with our clients and all the business stuff. The artist work and how they see the world and how we bring humans into the center of what we're doing is some of the work that I'm most excited about, especially at this stage in the metaverse evolution, where we have the opportunity to define the metaverse doing good for society and hopefully not make the same mistakes as what will happen in the internet of today.
Thanks, Domhnaill. And I love that example, this idea of us being able to sort of engage and be more immersed in the perception of art from the artist, but also share that amongst ourselves also. Esther, hundo.xyz, you organize events in the metaverse. Can you maybe give us a quick example of how one of those is very different from maybe, say, a physical event?
Yeah, so as I said earlier, we realised quite quickly that you need a Web 2 bridge, to start to be able to introduce what are nascent and emerging technologies and concepts. So in November last year, we launched CareerCon, which was the world's first immersive Web3 careers expo for Gen Z parents, educators, employers to discover the future of learning and work. Because discovery is the first thing that we need to to tackle. So it was obviously it was panels talking about the future of work, future of learning, bringing young people in with educators and all the key stakeholders. But to access CareerCon, you had to register at hundo.xyz, create your avatar profile, which is your digital identity, and then you were able to watch the content, which was on demand. But we also had 3 immersive spaces, one which we had built with a partner, and then an art gallery, to Dom's point, about how to introduce illustrators, in this case, Gen Z. Alves made it. He was there with Denzel Kessie, who's a Beamer 100, and it was their ability it's about storytelling, I think, which is what we talked about earlier. It was the ability for our audience to experience how you can go from a physical and analog world and translate that into an immersive metaverse environment. The things that we didn't expect to happen, which are the things I guess I'm most happy about, we had entire school groups just turn up as their avatars in the Hundo art gallery, which is obviously tremendous fun because, as I say, you don't have to go and sit down, do all these things. And one of our other environments, same thing again, it's like you can just wander around and there might be kind of a whale, you know, or something that just kind of goes past you, and it's about how do you reimagine the way that we experience immersive spaces. So so that is our kind of annual flagship event. For, you know, and it's about making it accessible. It's also about making it fun. And I think a lot of what we see at the moment in terms of barriers to entry are people are just a bit scared of it, or also they think that they need a headset or very, very expensive equipment. And it's trying to break down those barriers so that we can get a mainstream audience engaging and understanding how powerful this new way of learning can be.
Mm-hmm. That's fantastic examples from the three of you. Thank you so much. And of course, it's not just changing the experience that we can have from a physical classroom or a physical retail space. It's also changing the cursus and the programs that are being offered. Roblox and the Parsons School of Design are going to be teaching a digital fashion course that's going to be exploring virtual fashion trends and teaching students how to design and sell digital clothing so that you can rock up to an art gallery exhibition in the metaverse wearing whatever it is that you want. And I know that there are also now colleges in the US that are looking to hold classes in the metaverse starting later this spring that are going to enable their students to travel back in time and experience history in a way that has never been possible before. So I think all of these ways we're already seeing learning start to take those first steps, if not leapfrog in, and the potential that the metaverse can hold. Now, we know that the future is never evenly distributed. What I want to hear from the three of you, you're calling in from Esther, I think you're in the Netherlands. Domhnaill, you're in...
Today I'm in Switzerland, so I'm always on the road.
Sorry, so... you're in Switzerland.
But I am
Danielius, where are you from today? Where are you joining
Vilnius.
us? Okay.
But I was in Switzerland this weekend.
Okay. Domhnaill, are you in New York or are you elsewhere on the globe?
I'm in the New York area. Yeah.
You're in the New York area. So I've got three people in three different areas of the globe here. What I want to ask you is about how are you seeing adoption rates of the metaverse perspectives around the globe, geographically, and then throughout industries? Danielius, I know you've got some experience with universities around the globe. Do you want to tell us what you're seeing?
Yes, I was participating in a private workshop by a few leading universities, actually quite a few global universities, all in one place. And I have witnessed different perspectives on Metaverse and Web3. And my take is that US, or in that situation, Silicon Valley mostly, was really living, with the Metaverse and Web3 as a concept that is, close to them. Whereas other countries are still trying to grasp what this entire Metaverse and Web3 will be. So I was speaking to, deans of technical colleges or technical schools. So to me, it was quite surprising that US is so much a thought leader in this industry, although it seems like Asia is more susceptible to this technology. There you have more users, but thought leadership, I think, is still remains with the US.
Okay. Domhnaill, from a business perspective, how are you seeing adoption and the perspectives of the metaverse around the globe? Are you seeing things differently from a geographical perspective and then from a sector perspective?
Yeah, definitely. So the US, I agree, is the most aggressive in their experimentation and investing in Metaverse and Web3. And I call it out that way specifically because in our view, they're not the same thing. They're distinctly different, but they do come together. So we work with, I'm in a global role, so I work with all of our geographies in EY, and I work cross-sector with all of the big industry players. I would say for us, what we're seeing is the US is by far the most active. Then we have EMEA, and then we have APAC. Generally, from a general business point of view. And what I'm seeing is that financial services organizations and health sciences organizations are probably as a level above the rest in relation to their maturity of thinking and also their early stage investments. Now, this is all very early though, right? We're at the earliest stages of what this will become. But I'm also seeing a lot of interest with governments and government agencies, that governments are believe that the metaverse could actually, if designed well, could be the solution to a lot of their problems. For example, governments have a lot of issues with siloed departments and agencies that do not speak to each other. And there's this view that the metaverse could be the best way to start bringing all that together and enabling value creation at a scale that they can never do with the technology of today. So yeah, I'm starting to see the US, EMEA, and APAC is what we're seeing on levels of investment and activity. Financial services and health sciences in particular stand above the rest, but we're seeing activity basically everywhere, every sector, every industry, every geography. It just depends on the spectrum of where on the curve are they of investment.
Okay, and that again underlines what we started this panel with about how do we move also education and learning, the transforming the journey into from education to employment, why it's so important. Esther, what's your perspective? What is you seeing and thinking and feeling out there in terms of adoption rates around the globe and in terms of sectors and industries?
Yeah, I think it's an incredibly fragmented landscape. You have some countries who are like not engaging at all, and then you have places like South Korea, Seoul, who've gone all in on the metaverse. We're seeing there's a totally forgotten the name as I knew I would, an island, Pacific island, I think, which because of climate change is facing actual existential disappearance on the planet. So they have built their entire system in the metaverse. Now, I don't think that's what should be happening. I think they should be able to survive on land. But you can really see that. You can really see how serious this is being taken. We see a lot of activity in UAE. And places, very interestingly, like Pakistan. The Pakistani Prime Minister recently announced he wanted to get 1 million young people into Web3 learning, which again is kind of back to how do you future-proof huge populations, youth populations, who because of tech, the rise of automation, robotics, AI, are facing entry-level job losses at an increasingly rapid rate, needing to be retrained, upskilled very, very quickly into the kind of future emerging frontier tech, which is where we focus. So we see kind of Global South as a huge area where the impact of these job losses and skills shortages are being acutely felt, and therefore the need to reskill quickly. Sub-Saharan Africa, again, another area where young people are high levels of youth populations, high levels of and rapidly increasing youth unemployment levels. So it's, I think, the overall global picture is, I think you've always, as with everything, you always have your early adopters, and then there's everyone else coming behind. But there are some huge signals, I think, at government level. I would agree with Dom on that, where there is a need to start to consider very quickly how we're going to tackle these problems using Web3 and Metaverse, which I agree are related but different.
And Esther, I know that you're in Switzerland right now. I believe you were at Davos the last couple of days. Was Metaverse Web3 a big subject at Davos? Is this something that the global leaders and the politicians who are meeting there, the business leaders, is it a subject of discussion for them also?
It's interesting. Obviously blockchain, is very much top of mind. But actually workforce skills, cyber, and kind of blockchain and sort of frontier, technology were some of the key themes. But skills, particularly in the context of we need to do something to tackle this problem at scale rapidly, because it's causing a lack of education, means a lack of access to decent paid work. It is an exacerbation of poverty, which is rising. And so actually the need to deploy new solutions through mechanisms like Web3, decentralization, decentralized finance, are things that are, obviously Davos is very different for everybody, but the particular bits that I was at and focused on, those were some of the very important key themes that were emerging.
Well, thank you for giving us that Davos update and those insights. We've started to use during this panel words beyond metaverse because metaverse is not the only subject here. We have on-chain learning, Web3, and on-chain authentication. Danielius, I want to turn to you because I want to think about, like, sort of beyond the experience and the space of the metaverse, how on-chain learning, Web3, and authentication is going to be changing learning also. Can you give us your insights and perspectives on what you think this is going to change for us?
So we've been working at the degree with blockchain credentials for 5 years. And with the emergence of NFTs as a social phenomenon back in 2021, we understood that we need to change, blockchain credentials into NFT credentials, simply because one is a record, another is a tool. And once you build those tools, you can use them in many different ways. For example, unlock new content, improve your level of knowledge, or access some kind of social group, or even collect it as a memorabilia. Like these, many of these use cases had not been thought of before, but once you start playing with it, then you see that it can be used in many useful ways and help communities drive their behavior in different direction. So what we expect to happen is that credentials or actually even work experiences will go into blockchain, most likely attached to some kind of self-sovereign identity or some other identity that anyone or everyone will use. And this might be your avatar, this might be your wallet, we'll see, we don't know. But what that creates is a trail of breadcrumbs that can actually create your personal profile of knowledge and skills, and based on which you can then interact with the world. Would it be employers or experiences in the metaverse? So essentially, we are moving from, paper resumes, from, then we move to LinkedIn. Now we are moving into verifiable credentials that unlock you opportunities. And it's so much in the ethos of Web3 to create this interoperability and create those protocols, essentially protocols that could interact with each other and enable people, companies, digital services to combine in ways that you haven't thought of before. So my bet is that in the future, 10 years from now, you will be getting jobs based on what you have done in the metaverse before, successfully or unsuccessfully, and it will give rise to again super specialization, because if you're good at community management, you have like those credentials, then you will be more interesting to others. And I believe that there will be way more specializations than before, because now we have like government-driven status infrastructure, bachelor degree, master's degree, etc. In the metaverse, we can recreate that from scratch based on what community wants. So creating alternative social status infrastructure in the metaverse.
Okay. Domhnaill, I'm going to turn to you and for your perspective on this also, sort of beyond the physical space of the metaverse as such, how do you see Web3, the blockchain authentication, being able to help out businesses when it comes to looking for talent out there?
Yeah, so I think it's going to fundamentally change everything. And that is, I'm actually not saying that to be hyperbolic. I truly believe it. So let's take a simple example. Today, someone's trying to apply for a job on my team. They go online, they submit their online resume, 2-page resume. They might make a connection to LinkedIn. That's all the usual stuff. We do an interview. Now, all of their LinkedIn and all of their resume could be complete lies. We do an interview with them to just establish, are they lying about their resume? Now, people can be very good at faking their level of knowledge and making it seem like their resume is truthful, right, and authentic. And then we might hire them eventually after all of that. And then they go through a process of at least 4 weeks where we have to do background checks on them. And then they join our team, and maybe their resume was a lie and they got through the interview through lying. and they join the team and they're a disaster. And now we have a serious situation on our hands. We've lost a lot of time, and we have to deal with this person that has been like, this doesn't happen a lot, by the way, but it's something that does happen. It can happen in the current structures. Now with this new Web3 on-chain everything, all of those issues go away. You cannot lie about what you've delivered in your projects on the blockchain, because literally you can see exactly what was delivered. You can trace it back to the start of the project all the way to deliverability, and it cannot be faked, cannot be lied about. When I interview you, now I interview you as a human to understand, how will you collaborate with my team? How do you communicate? What's your vision for the change in the world you want to create? I don't need to spend so much time trying to technically evaluate you or determine if you're lying to me. It saves a lot of time. Now we get to interact more on the human level. And now I don't have to do background checks. The form of the background check might substantially change, and it might be collapsed from 4 weeks down to literally a 7-minute online check against your blockchain credentials. So literally everything changes. Our ability to do things at speed, at scale, provably, in a trust-based way, all of that should be built in time. And that's very powerful in the change that will enable.
Definitely. As you said, the sort of scenario that described can be rare, but it does happen. We can get people who put things into their CVs or into their LinkedIn profiles. But one of the things that Web3 and on-chain authentication can do is help us validate what people have really done. But I think also capture beyond the more classic forms of education that we tend to see in a resume, in a CV, or in a LinkedIn profile that have value today and will have even more value in the workplace going forwards. Esther, I want to come to you because I know that I think you're in the process of writing a book about helping mums understand the metaverse. But what I want to ask you about in particular is about how on-chain authentication, and what Domhnaill just described, is challenging the established qualification structure, and how we can help parents imagine and understand the future measures of skills and success, because HR might not care so much about baccalaureate or A-level exams, traditional exams in the future. What are you seeing and hearing from an employment, qualifications and employment HR perspective about how Web3 will change this?
That's an epic question, right? Okay, so I'm gonna sort of give you an example because it's the easiest way. So the reason that I've decided to co-author a book which is currently called Metaverse for Mums is because I am one, and there are a lot of mums working in the metaverse. And it's actually very important. Parents are the single biggest influencers on the critical life choices that their children make. And if they feel deliberately, by virtue of jargon and being, spoken at as though they don't know what they're talking about, they are an incredibly important part of, to Dom's point earlier, how we ensure that the worst excesses of Web 2, which regulatory, child protection frameworks just simply could not keep pace with and never have got back to that place. And all the resulting awfulness for teenagers who've only known that kind of space to grow up in. It's really, really important that we have this ecosystem of parents who also, happen to be teachers, employers, brands. So that was the purpose, and it was really for me. My son is now 18, so I watched him go through. He's a gamer, so I have watched his online life from about the age of 8. So for a decade, sort of from Minecraft, to monetizing a server in Minecraft. Speaking in multiple languages, to all of his friends online. And at the same time, he was the COVID lockdown, GCSE generation. So for most of the day, he would have to sit on not a virtual lesson, just listening to a teacher as though they were all sitting in a classroom, and sit there all day. And then not actually getting qualifications at the end of it anyway, because they actually never sat any exams. And there was this wonderful moment where government could have gone, COVID has just revolutionised the way that we can assess, teach, young people and children, and it's back to more English and maths as being the solution to everything. And for me, young people tend not to, and in some cases are actively encouraged, are actively told not to, write the fact that in their own time, you know, on their own dime, they are building worlds, they are interacting with a global audience, they are demonstrating all of the soft, that I actually call essential skills that employers say that they can't find. And they're doing it, leading their clans in Clash of Clans. They are demonstrating entrepreneurial skills by trading skins in Valorant, you know, and all of these things. And I just look at these diametrically opposed worlds. And with everything that we know about how children and young people learn, and to an extent, I would argue, adults, why have we made it all so boring and two-dimensional when we live in such an incredible world? And for me, the promise of the metaverse, and I am terribly utopian about it, is that actually young people will, and children and young people will have the ability to live, work, learn and earn in an entirely different way, which means that they're not tied to screens and tablets, and they're not walking around, you know, 8 hours a day with a headset on. They are able to learn the skills that they need in a meaningful way, in an enjoyable way. And then hopefully they can pack up and go outside and run around with a football or whatever it is. And that's why I love it. And that's the bit that I really want people to kind of grasp about why some of us are in this and why we think it's so important.
Okay, so Esther, you've just shown us and demonstrated sort of like the learning experience, but also the skills that learners out there are acquiring today by building worlds, building universes, starting e-commerce, as you said, sort of like fashion, their own fashion brands. And so we're thinking about the qualifications and how those things aren't captured in the traditional qualifications today. Domhnaill, you told us about sort of part of the recruitment process, but are HR also gearing up for this? Are they understanding that the qualifications are going to be shifting maybe away from some of those more traditional qualifications and into these more validated, as I say, on-chain, authenticated, but more of those soft skills and maybe those building experiences that we're hearing about?
Yeah, I would say in general, HR have no idea what's about to happen in the world. I would say generally they're way behind now. We do have we've some activities in EY where we're already leveraging these technologies to bring new talent in. And in fact, part of the interview process is if the talent can even come into some of these environments, because you would need a digital wallet and you need to do certain things, which is almost like a skills test just to come into the environment. So we're trying to be smart about how we build some of this out and how we can find the right talent through early stages on the hiring process. But I would say generally, yeah, HR, I don't believe they understand the generational divide. I don't believe they have even any sense of the fact that, in our view, think about the transformation in the world from 1995 to 2005 with the internet of today. And another big leap was 2005 to 2015. We're going through the equivalent of that kind of transformation with what the metaverse and the Web3 will be. And literally, without exaggeration, in my view, everything changes. And not just HR, but innovation people, technology people, strategy people, CEOs, board of directors. Largely speaking, they don't have a grasp or they don't have a handle on that disruptiveness, to use that horrible word, that is going to take place ahead of them. And part of my job is to try and help people see that, remove all of the hype, remove all of the media nonsense that goes on. A lot of that information is totally incorrect, by the way. Try and get to the truth of what these things are today and what they can become in the future, and help our clients and help our folks in EY really start thinking about how you can put sensible investments in place today to better position you for whatever the world will be in the future.
Thank you for giving us those perspectives of change over the last couple of decades as well, Domhnaill. I think that helps us appreciate the speed at which we're actually moving. Danielius, you've created Learnoverse, but also the Metaverse Education Alliance. How are you working in that alliance to help education move forward into the sort of scenarios that Domhnaill's just described and the learning challenges that Esther's evoked?
Essentially, when we started building Learnoverse, we understood that we cannot imagine all the necessary things, or actually we shouldn't be the only company deciding on that. A lot of that has to be collaborative effort. For example, defining a new skills framework for metaverse skills, or creating the entire content library, or even imagining new modes of learning in the metaverse. There's just not enough imagination in one person or even a million people. We need everyone's help. And by the way, this is how the entire Web3 industry has evolved. Once somebody has figured out NFTs, now it's a thing for everyone, or DeFi or other things. So essentially everyone is building on each other's successes. So in order to create this alternative education system in the metaverse, we need to come together, everyone who cares about that, and collaboratively explore, experiment, make mistakes, find something that works, and then enable others to reuse it. So this is the purpose of Metaverse Education Alliance. First of all, for those who are building learning experiences in the metaverse, to come together, to share their experiences, build the common infrastructure, and then, of course, right now we need to evangelize, Web3 and the metaverse in order to bring more people. And this is what we were doing as BitDegree for the last 5 years, providing educational courses and experiences on Web3 and now the metaverse.
Okay, so we've just talked about the potential futures with the metaverse, but that also Web3 and on-chain authentication can bring us. We've looked at that from a learning perspective. We've looked at it from a employment and a recruitment perspective. We've even looked at it through sort of arts and experiences. But there are maybe many people in our audience out there that are asking, but how do I get into the metaverse? How do I, which door do I knock on? How do I get in there to start exploring, to start learning, to start creating? What practical information, tips, anything, and also sort of podcast, videos, books, sites do you have that we can share with the LPTV viewers and help them start to get in? Esther, I see you nodding your head, so I'm going to come to you first. What advice would you give to our audience out there?
No, I don't like going first. I was laughing, so I was going to say it's just a massive plug for Hundo, isn't it? But that's exactly why we built CareerCon. So yeah, go to hundo.xyz, have a look around. But also on the more metaverse focused side of things, one of the most influential people and most useful people that I met on the journey was Jamie Burke from Outlier Ventures, and although their website is obviously a VC accelerator for startups, the papers that he writes and the way that he articulates the importance of the metaverse is really, really useful, and it's relatively bite-sized. And then obviously Kathy Hackle, who's a mentor and friend. She's the godmother of the metaverse. She is heavily involved in digital fashion, but also has written several books now, most recently Into the Metaverse, but also The Augmented Workforce, which was, these are kind of inspirational people, and they write well. Matthew Ball is another one. It's a big long list, so I'll stop there.
Oh no, that's great for some examples. And Domhnaill, with you, where you're helping businesses, global thought leaders around the world, do you have any tips and tools, pieces of information, books, podcasts, anything to share with the audience to help them crack into the metaverse and experience?
Yeah, I agree with everything Esther said, so I'll go a slightly different direction. One of the areas that I think, is most exciting for me and where I think people can differentiate in the future is around behavioral science, behavioral psychology. And now, I'm not saying don't go and do the tech things, don't read all the information, but at the center of all of this always is humanity. And what I find is that the people that understand human needs, the human condition, human behavior, they're the ones that can then apply the technology to really solve those needs. And I'm a big advocate of behavioral science in general. And I would ask people to don't go too far. You can go down the rabbit hole of tech and NFTs and blockchain and all that stuff. I could talk to you endlessly about that. Don't forget that the technology should be an enabler to solve a human need. And that's the one thing I'd ask you. So I would say one name, Rory Sutherland. He's the vice chair of Ogilvy. He has brought behavioral science into marketing generally. He's got a lot of really cool TED Talks and things like that online. Very accessible. He makes things fun. He uses some profanity, so I apologize in advance for Rory Sutherland. But he's probably one of the best examples around bringing behavioral science into creating change in the world.
Fantastic. And I love that you've grounded us in humanity and behavioral science there. Danielius, quickly, any tips and resources for our audience?
Of course, you should go to bitdegree.org because we have thousands of courses on Web3 and tens of thousands of tutorials and also videos, etc. So we are actually probably we are the largest Web3 educator right now. We have 1.3 million registered learners and serving 20 million visitors to the platform a year. So people come to BitDegree to actually learn about Web3. So I encourage everyone to do that. We actually give it for free. In the true spirit of Web3, we want people to learn and earn. We have some partner offers that actually pay you in cryptocurrency for completing courses, because learning is hard, so motivation always works. So I believe that it is actually difficult to break into Web3 at current level of user experience. Our estimation is that it's around 100 hours of learning to become industry ready, but it's not difficult to become a simple user who buys his first NFT, maybe joins a Discord server and talking about the Metaverse, says maybe just go and try Minecraft or Roblox, or because they can show the true power of having communities building things.
Thank you so much. And I love the fact that the three of you have given some very practical advice through books, videos, courses. Certainly breaking into the metaverse is not super easy. It's something that's a journey. And I think those resources that you've shared can help. Just very quickly, we've got 2 minutes left, but I want to ask each of you very quickly, what are your future visions, hopes, wishes, and dreams for learning in the metaverse? Domhnaill, do you want to take that one first?
Yeah, we are three-dimensional entities that live in a three-dimensional world, and we've evolved over hundreds of thousands of years in 3 dimensions, and we've reduced that in modern history to 2 dimensions. So every way, in my view, the way we learn is entirely wrong. It goes entirely against our evolution and what it is to be a human. I'm excited about bringing brains into this 3-dimensional learning environments and tapping more into the skills that we have and the way we view and solve problems in the world.
Wonderful, Domhnaill. I love that vision. Esther, over to you.
There are 1 billion new tech roles needed by 2030, at the same time as an entirely collapsing bridge between education to employment. And I want Web3, frontier tech and the metaverse to be the way that we solved the problem of youth unemployment at scale, so that young people don't have to choose between eating and heating. They get to live full lives, both in and outside of the metaverse.
I love that vision, Esther. Thank you. Danielius, to close us out, what's your vision and hope?
I bet that in the next decade, the largest education institution will be in the metaverse. It will originate in the metaverse. It will have no physical presence, and it will have probably millions of teachers there.
Well, Danielius, I look forward to that vision as well. I look forward to being able to welcome the three of you back to the Learning Planet Festival at some point in the future, when we can update on the progress made and in fact, even see how we can maybe leapfrog even further. So thank you very much to the three of you. It's been fabulous having you with us here on LPTV this afternoon. Thank you. That session on the metaverse and the future of digital learning experiences is one in a series of events at the festival dedicated to the intersection of education and learning and technology for today and for tomorrow. If you want to hear more about artificial intelligence, Web3, DAO, or VR, be sure to check out the festival program for more information. One session not to miss is how will we learn with the next generation of AI. That's taking place on Friday from 3 to 4 p.m. Central European Time. So be sure to set a reminder on your phone so you can catch it. And in case you do miss it or any of the other sessions, remember that you can watch them all for free on our YouTube channel. Thank you.